Tim, how does it feel to present Feast at MiX Festival?
Well, it's really thrilling to be here. What's really nice is actually the film has been shown in many festivals already, but it's the first queer festival that I go to myself. So that's I'm really stoked to see how it works in this context, to see people from the family that I'm also part of, so to speak. So that's really wonderful. Yeah.
The story is based on a piece of news from the Netherlands. Why did you choose to portray this particular story in the movie?
Well, one of the reasons was that it was such an extreme case, and it seemed so easy to to put a label on it and to say, well, what happened when this came out in the Netherlands? People were, for instance, there was a newspaper that had a headline saying HIV monsters. So this was also really the way that we talked about it in the Netherlands. You know, what happened there was really an act of monsters. But then I also found out that, you know, one of these guys, they had jobs. So one of these guys was a bartender, the other one, he worked for an energy company, and the other one was a nurse. And then you think this concept of a monster doesn't really fit, you know, like a profession like that, for instance. So in a way, it's very simple. It's the idea to research what it started a bit with researching what evil can be and how that can be also part of daily life, let's say. But then it turned really into a project where I researched what it means to be a perpetrator and what it means to be a victim, and also very much what truth is. So there's some very big questions in the film, I think.
What about the idea of dividing it into 7 segments, each one talking about a different aspect of the story?
Yeah. So, well, the invisible backbone of the film is a text by Plato. It's the Symposium. That's it's also set in during an orgy where 6 men are trying to find the definition of eros, and at that time eros really stood for love, beauty, and truth. And then so you have these 6 monologues about what truth and beauty and love is, and then the 7th monologue is by Socrates, and he says, well, everybody did a great job, but none of you spoke the truth. And in fact, he said this okay and it's normal, because truth is not something that you can pin down to one monologue. The truth is what we're sharing here, and is always moving in an elliptical movement. So this I also wanted to research in the film. I was not really looking for answers, like for why did they do it, but I was really looking for perspectives. Like, if you look at it from one perspective, what does it mean for another person? And so this is also the reason why I decided to work with 7 DOPs. We really work with 7 crews, 7 camera crews. And also with the idea that there will be really 7 sets of eyes and 7 lenses to filter this film, the scenario through.
Now, HIV and AIDS are relatively new themes for cinema. The first movie talking about it was Philadelphia, and that was in 1993, when there was a very strong stigma around the illness. So do you think that over the years, talking about it more and more in movies has helped to change the perception of this illness?
Yes. I guess, well, in general, I don't know. It really depends on which part of the world you talk about, of course. But if you look at, I think, the Western world, of course, it's much more easy to talk about topics like that. Although for me, Feast, my film is not, or our film, I must say, is not so much about HIV or AIDS. It's really about this idea of what it means to be a victim or a perpetrator, and to what it means to cross those lines. But you're right, of course, then the starting point is the fact that they injected other people with their own HIV-infected blood. Yeah, I don't know. I remember seeing a film, and I think it was even before Philadelphia. It's called Silver Lake Life, A View from Here. And this was 2 guys who were actually dying of AIDS, and they had a video diary, and at that time it was quite new to have that, and it was very touching. And that was really when it was just a few years after, you know, they just found out what AIDS was. And having come from there to how we talk about it now, it's a huge difference. Yes.
Talking a bit about your inspirations, is there any director that inspires you in your work?
Yeah, I know, it's funny. So my background is fine arts. So I went to art school, and it's funny the difference between sometimes between fine arts and film is that in film people are always interested in what your inspiration is. While I think in fine art it's more how original you can be. So and when I made Feast, I was not out. I didn't have one film in mind. I wasn't really thinking of any filmmakers. But in general, I love film and I see a lot of film. I also program film in Rotterdam at Worm, which is a space for avant-gardistic recreation. So I'm interested in cinema that pushes boundaries and that really looks at storytelling in different ways. And then I also really love like more big cinema. I'm a big Michael Haneke fan, for instance.
Can I ask you about a movie in particular that you love and you would recommend everyone to watch?
A movie? Well, this is a really hard movie. Well, okay, so I was thinking of coming here to this LGBTQ I plus festival, and I was thinking, well, what is one of my favorite queer films? Although I always find queer also a bit of a term that's not neutral, but a film that I like a lot is Totally Fucked Up by Greg Araki. It's also from the early 90s, and for me that was also a film that really emancipated me in a way. Not emancipated me, but really was so wonderful to see young people. I was young then, of course, to hang out and talk about what it meant to be gay, or not even talk about it, but just be themselves and being together and hang out. And I mean, it was Greg Araki I think it's a great American filmmaker, and this film was inspired by a press clipping also, like my film, but it was a press clipping about, I think, a boy who committed suicide because of the fact that he was gay and he couldn't come out, etc. And there was some research done that a lot of gay people in the US committed suicide. So it talks about these dark sides of being homosexual, but it also really celebrated being together and being solidaire together and hanging out and having sex and having great conversations and drugs and drinks, etc. So that's a film I would recommend. But I'm also curious to see how it holds now, because I have never seen it again. So I'm talking about this 25 years ago, I think, that I saw it. So I'm curious to see it again also.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks.